1 Samuel 31. Then it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had carried out an attack on the Negev and on Ziklag, and had overthrown Ziklag and burned it with fire. And they took captive the women and all who were in it, from the small to the great, without killing anyone, and drove them off and went their way. And when David and his men came to the city, behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept, until there was no strength in them to weep. Now David's two wives had been taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. Also David was in great distress, because the people spoke of stoning him, for all the people were embittered, each one because of his sons and his daughters. But David felt strengthened in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar, the priest, the son of Ahimelech, please bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David, and David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this band of raiders? Will I overtake them? And he said to him, pursue, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will certainly rescue everyone. So David left, he and the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the brook Besor, where some who were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 who were too exhausted to cross the brook Besor stayed behind. And now they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he ate, and they provided him water to drink. And they also gave him a slice of fig cake and 2 cakes of raisins, and he ate. Then his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite, and my master abandoned me when I became sick 3 days ago. He carried out an attack on the Negev of the Kerethites, and on that which belongs to Judah, and on the Negev of Caleb, and he burned Ziklag with fire. Then David said to him, would you bring me down to this band of raiders? And he said, swear to me by God that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will bring you down to this band. Now when he had brought him down, behold, they were dispersed over all the land, eating and drinking and celebrating because of all the great plunder that they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David slaughtered them from the twilight until the evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken and rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, plunder or anything that they had taken for themselves. David brought it all back. So David had captured all the sheep and the cattle which the people drove ahead of the livestock, and they said, this is David's plunder. And when David came to the 200 men who were too exhausted to follow David and had been left behind at the brook Besor, and they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him, then David approached the people and greeted them. Then all of the wicked and worthless men among those who went with David said, since they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoils that we have recovered, except to every man his wife and his children, so that they may lead them away and leave. But David said, You must not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us, for he has protected us and handed over to us the band of raiders that came against us, and who will listen to you in this matter. For as is the share of the one who goes down into the battle, so shall be the share of the one who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. So it has been from that day forward that he made a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. Now when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoils to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, Behold, a gift for you from the spoils of the enemies of the Lord, to those who were in Bethel, to those who were in Ramoth of the Negev, to those who were in Jatir, to those who were in Aurora, to those who were in Siphmoth, to those who were in Eshtemoa, to those who were in Rachel, to those who were in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, to those who were in the cities of the Kenites, to those who were in Hormah, to those who were in Borashan, and to those who were in Athach, and to those who were in Hebron, and to those and to all the places where David himself and his men walked. The word of the Lord. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of it.
Have you ever heard the story of Alexander? I'm not talking about Alexander the Great. I'm talking about Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. If you don't know, that's a children's book about a kid, a little boy, who goes through a rough patch. If you've read it, you may remember Alexander got gum in his hair. He tripped on a skateboard. He had homework to do. He had to eat lima beans for dinner. He got soap in his eye. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. When you're little and you read that book, Alexander's experience sounds awful. But when you read that book as an adult, you realize that Alexander has no idea what really bad days are like. You know, when you become an adult, you experience bad days. I don't just mean flat tires and bum knees and busted dishwashers. I mean those days that are gut-wrenching. Those days that are heartbreaking. Those days that are life-changing. Have you ever had one of those days? Maybe it was the day that your marriage fell apart. Maybe it was the day that you had a miscarriage. Or maybe it was the day you had to drop your youngest son off at a troubled youth camp 2 states away. Those days are real. And those days are raw. And if they haven't happened to you yet, those days are coming. In 1 Samuel chapter 30, David has one of those days. What David goes through is one of the worst days in his life. And it's not just David who goes through this. It's also his 600 men with him. Imagine the story of Job multiplied by 600. That is the intensity of this devastating day. And yet this chapter that begins with defeat will end in victory. A story that starts with tears will end with smiles. And my friends, what I want you to see this morning from this passage is that David's victory, his main victory, is not the military one, it's the personal one. What happens on the battlefield pales in comparison to what happens in David's heart. And when those bad days come, let's be honest, that's where the real battle is. It's right here. And before David could go out there and battle, he must battle in here. And through this all, David will learn about the victory that comes from God. Those days, when they come, they are hard. Do you know what to do when those days are real? Well, I pray that 1 Samuel 30 will equip every one of us to be ready. Our story that we just read, it comes to us in what I'm calling 3 acts. And if I could label them, Act 1 is great trials, Act 2 is great strength, and Act 3 is great blessings. Great trials, great strength, and great blessings. And behind it all, we're going to see our great God at work. For a few chapters now, if you've been with us, you know David has been backslidden. David has been living among the Philistines, and not only that, David has been pretending to basically work with the Philistines. And he found himself in this sticky situation going to war against Israel on the side of the Philistines. And last week we saw in chapter 29 how against all odds, David, the future king of Israel, was honorably discharged from the Philistine army. He got out of the sticky situation and got